Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome back to our series Pagan Tales. Today we are looking at the goddess Epona. She is the Celtic goddess of horses whose worship spread from Britain throughout Europe and as far south as Africa. Now, this makes her quite unique because usually, there was a spread of gods upwards, northwards, and sometimes they were accepted and sometimes not. It's very rare for specifically a Celtic goddess to migrate that far south. But she was readily embraced by the Roman legions, probably owing to her association with horses. And then, of course, her other attributes having to do with agriculture and with the domestic life. That also broadened her appeal to the point where Rome actually established a feast day for her, December 17th, if memory serves. So that's a little tidbit. And then, as always, it would not be a video about a Celtic deity unless we talked about the discrepancies of their family origins. For Epona, you have two parental possibilities. Either it was Ioka and Carnonos, or a random mare, the first horse, supposedly, and a man called Felonius Stellos. Now, the last comes from a Greek source, the other comes from a Gallic source. So, as always, do your own research, make up your own mind. The Celtic gods do not make tracking them down easy. So let's get a little further into another identity crisis with this goddess, because as per usual, with many a Celtic goddess, there is considerable debate surrounding Epona and whether or not that was her proper name or title, if she was known by different names or titles in different locales, just depending upon where you were. It depended on who you were, how you referred to her, but it was all the same goddess. And then, depending on who you ask, Epona and Rhiannon are one and the same. Epona being the name used in Gaul and Rome, and Rhiannon being the name that was used in the land area that we now know as Wales. And if Epona and Rhiannon are indeed one and the same, then that raises all of the specters and all of the questions surrounding Rhiannon's identity. And there are really robust arguments that conflate Rhiannon with the Morrigan. Both names are actually titles, they mean great queen, along with other mythological similarities. But it's one of those things where I have gone back and forth on this question, adding in, this other possible goddess into the mix. Raises even more questions. If this is something that interests you, examine all the possible evidence you can find, come to your own conclusions. Don't rush to conclusions because there's always going to be a counter argument. And I've heard people on every side of this, insist till they were blue on the face that their opinion was the correct opinion. It was the only one consistent with the evidence, and everyone else was an idiot. And I heard people say that about, all possible answers to this. So, again, don't really pay attention to people's vehemence. Just examine the quality of their evidence, make up your own mind, and of course, allow your own personal experiences and impressions to inform your own opinions on this topic. Because sometimes interacting with deities a bit more directly, that's going to clarify a few issues, at least for yourself. So yeah, don't be bullied into accepting any one answer on this. Now, let's get into why we're really talking about this goddess, and it has to do with her association with the harvest. Two of her symbols are the cornucopia and fruit basket, and they, of course, by nature of what they are, they automatically associate this goddess with the product of agriculture. And it was known that this goddess was called upon to bless the harvest and the land itself. But I believe it's especially in Gaul and Rome. Once her worship did actually reach the way to Rome. Now, these symbols are distinct. And it underscores her association with every crop, including the all-important barley corn in the British Isles. But by associating it with her with both the vegetables and the fruits and the grains and everything else, it just says that, anything having to do with the agricultural cycle, this is a goddess who is concerned with such matters. Epona is also strongly associated with horses, that above all else. And while horses were not used in agriculture, at least in the Celtic world, until the Christian era was underway, because the association of horses and agriculture, I don't think it would be improper to call upon her in matters that had to do with farm horses or even with farm equipment and other livestock, such as, cattle, oxen, geese, whatever it is that you are raising to help sustain the family or to sell at market. All of these things. She just seems like an all around good agricultural, ranching, farming kind of goddess. So if she's not someone you've worked with before in this context, you might want to give her a go. Next up, the altar. The Romans made a habit of just adorning altars that were dedicated to Epona with just garland upon garland upon garland of roses. I suppose they had, a good climate for growing them, and so what you have is what you're able to use a whole lot of. But the fact that they did put forth such effort, it does really impress upon us just how much this goddess really did work her way into the Roman heart. Now, depending on where you live, you might just barely have some still late blooming roses by the time Mabon rolls around. I have a yellow rose. Well, it's planted at the farm now, but that yellow rose, some years it does real good, some years it does pretty badly. And then there's been some years where it was still blooming beautifully when we were starting to have flirtations with the frost. I mean, just yellow, happy. Aren't I gorgeous? You should be looking at me. Don't pay attention to those ordinary chrysanthemums. Oh no, I'm a rose. You should be looking at me. It's very egotistical, this particular rose. But if you have any roses of that similar attitude and Mabon, and you're wanting to work with Epona, you might consider giving her one of those flowers. However, it's also fitting to place oats, apples, carrots onto the altar for her. I think anything that you grew from your home garden, I think that would be appropriate. I really do. Keys are also associated with the Pona, whether it's the key metaphorically to the stables or the key to unlock dreams, because one of the associations with horses is being to travel back and forth through different realms, states of being, and the worlds. So that's what links her in more with the possibility of dreamscapes and messages bequeathed in that context. Now, for offerings, cakes, that seemed to be a pretty consistent suggestion I found every source I consulted. I think seasonal flavors would be a very nice touch. So if you have, some kind of special cake or a pie or a cobbler or whatever desserty thing that you make at this time of year that just has those seasonal flavors, especially if you're using things that you grew, I think this would be very well accepted by this goddess. Apples or carrots, anything. These are known treats for horses, and Epona is said to seldom be away from her beloved animals. So if a horse would like it, you could put it on the altar for that to not only offer to her, but also by extension, her horses. Rosehip tea would be another thing you could offer her, especially since the Romans, associated her with roses so much. Acts of service towards horses. Creating a sacred space for Epona in your garden, and of course, making dream sachets because, again, her associating with horses that links her with other realms, and that, of course, links her with the realm of dreams. So, a dream sachet, especially if you're putting it under your pillow in hopes of contacting her, that's a little something to help improve the odds. So, working with her, Epona is a deity that's not often thought of at this time of year, at least in the circles I've been in. I haven't really heard people mention her with any great regularity, let alone in association with the harvest. And I think part of this is how because she is so known for anything having to do with horses, and not everyone keeps horses these days, of course. But I think perhaps we've taken too limited a view of this goddess. She has very distinct agricultural and even domestic ties. So I think there are other reasons why we might reach out to her, even if, perhaps horses may not necessarily be our favorite animal, or we don't keep them ourselves, or we're not in an area where they're around. It doesn't matter. Epona is still a relevant goddess. And if you have been looking for a new deity to try to connect with, or someone who's associated with the harvest but isn't amongst the usual bunch, maybe you're not really connecting with the usual bunch this year or at all, but I mean, Epona may be of interest to you. It's at least worth, uh, giving it a try. And, maybe now is the time for a revival in her appreciation and indeed worship. So that is what I have for you about the goddess Epona. I hope I have whetted your appetite to learn a little bit more about her. Let me know if you have any experiences working with her in the comments, or any thoughts having to do with this. Weigh in on the whole identity crisis if you feel of a mind to. Just share your thoughts with me. I'd be interested to know. And next week we will be talking about the god Mabon, because Mabon is coming right up. I mean, everything is moving so quickly. So please come back for that, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.